What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing. The Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series will continue its conversation with you concerning the complete history of boxing. Ray Robinson would begin his professional debut on the night of October 4th, 1940. He would fight as a lightweight from October 4th, 1940 to July 21st, 1941. 25 bouts as a lightweight. Now, in that professional debut, he would find himself under the lights of the historic building, New York's Madison Square Garden. He would open up the Garden, being the first black fighter to do so under the conditions of a World Heavyweight Championship contest. And he couldn't have been a better fighter to open up the Garden than with the first black featherweight champion of America, Henry Armstrong. You see, Armstrong would attempt something very historic, his 20th welterweight championship title defense. Now remember, he came from featherweight. And he would face Fritzy Zivik. 75% of the members of that audience didn't show up for that historic event. They showed up for the young kid from Harlem. A young kid who gave Harlem hope. Showed him what it would be like if he can successfully take the baton from another Harlemite that the members of Harlem who look forward to seeing what success would be like. That man's name was Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt. He would win the colored middleweight championship title from Jack McVeigh, Julius Williams, in 1929. And Harry Smith gave them hope. His dad wanted him to become a dentist. He wanted to become a mechanical engineer. It wasn't until he was working in a novelty shop that a co-worker would take his tip money, change that was laying on the table. He wanted his tip back. The co-worker acted as though he didn't know what he was talking about. Harry Smith said, "Let's step outside." And that's what they did. See, during those days, when you call someone out, you didn't have what you have in here. Somebody called you out, you had to meet the challenge. You didn't have this thing you have going on today. Different set of men, different set of character. It was a personal thing because your last name meant everything. There was a young man by the name of Bojack. His grandmother taught him that lesson when he came into the house crying. His grandmother had a plate of food waiting for him and asked him what he was crying for. And when he told his grandmother, what he was crying for, she said, "You sure that's what you're crying for?" He said, "Yes." Told him, "Go back outside and get your money." And as he began to stutter from the gulps of perspiration and tears flowing down his eyes, he didn't want to go outside. She told him to go in the next room and get that belt hanging off the door. He knew right away what to expect. Took off his shirt, and in syllables, she said to Henry Armstrong's idol, Bojack, "No walker runs from no one." That was not a metaphor. Bojack's name was Sidney Walker. You see, the last name in the earlier days meant something. Different time now. You didn't disrespect someone's last name because that was their family tree. So Henry Armstrong would take on Fritzy Zivik. Fritzy Zivik had 4 brothers. 2 of them had won a gold medal in the Olympics in the 1928 games. The last set of brothers to do that would be the Spinks brothers, Leon and Michael Spinks, in 1976. But Henry Armstrong would lose to Fritzy Zivik. And the Garden couldn't believe what they were watching. But that was a treat for them because the reason why they showed up was because of Ray Robinson. Ray Robinson would tiptoe across the ring, beautiful fashion, snapping a jab. Then eventually he saw an opening and he would open up with a combination and he would knock out Jose Echeverria. Jose Echeverria was from the Bronx, New York. Reminds me of Carlos Ortiz in that way because he drove a taxi cab. And when he drove that taxi cab, he would have the music in the background playing. Quite a character was Jose Echeverria. But that's how Ray Robinson would begin his professional debut. Just wanted to give you a little background. He would have several fights as a lightweight, including a fighter, Mike Evans, who many knew of. And that was the biggest test. He would fight Charlie Burns, who fought many up-and-coming fighters. Now, Ray Robinson would take on Sammy Engat, July 21st, 1941, at Schreier Park in Philadelphia. He would defeat him in a unanimous decision in 10 rounds. Now, that was his 21st pro bout. 15,000 spectators would gather to see that fight. Sammy Engat would hold the NBA World Lightweight Championship crown. Robinson drops Engat for a count of 9. It was scheduled for 10. It was a non-title affair. Sammy Engat, his name was Salvador Engatti. He was known as the Louisville Slugger. But those who knew him called him the Clutch because of his fighting style. He was born January 17, 1915 in Washington, Pennsylvania. He died October 22nd, 1980. He was 65 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Cleveland, Ohio. I remember seeing Sammy Engat. Didn't meet him, but I remember seeing Sammy Engat. My dad reminded me of who he was. He had a total bout career of 131 bouts, 94 wins, 23 knockouts, 29 losses, and 8 draws. He would win the Kentucky State Lightweight Championship crown from Wesley Jones, the vacant NBA Lightweight Championship crown from Davey Day, December 8th, 1939. He would win the New York SAC Lightweight Championship crown from Lou Jenkins, December 19th, 1941, and the vacant NBA Lightweight Championship crown from Luther Slugger White, October 27th, 1943. Ray Robinson's professional welterweight career. Between August 27th, 1941 and August 9th, 1950, he had 92 welterweight bouts. He defeats Marty Servo, 10 rounds, September 25th, 1941. Fritzy Zivic in 10 rounds, October 31st, 1941. Fritzy Zivic once again in 10 rounds, January 16th, 1942. Maxie Berger, 10 rounds, February 20th, 1942. Norman Rubio, 10 rounds, March 20th, 1942. Marty Servo, 10 rounds, May 28th, 1942. All New York Madison Square Garden bouts. He would defeat Sammy Engat, July 31st, 1942, at Madison Square Garden, 10-round unanimous decision. Robinson defeats Fritzy Zivic in 10 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden, on the night of October 31st, 1941. He was 21 years of age. He was 139 pounds. What was very interesting about this contest was that Ray Robinson was a 7-5 betting odds. And it was Fritzy Zivic who had the experience. Fritzy Zivic who would defeat Henry Armstrong in 1940 and knock him out in 1941 in a return go. There were 20,551 screaming spectators. It was Ray's 26th professional bout. Zivic weighed 146 pounds. Ray Robinson defeats Frizzy Zivic again. 10 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden. January 16th, 1942 to be exact. He was 22 years of age. He weighed 142 pounds. The referee was Arthur Donovan. He awards Robinson with a 10-round knockout. It was a victory that the 15,476 spectators would be very proud to witness. Zivic was dropped once in the 9th round, once in the 10th round. Ray won 2 for 2 bouts, winning his idol's revenge. His idol meaning Henry Armstrong. September 25th, 1942. Robinson defeats Marty Servo in 10 rounds at the Convention Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in front of 11,000 screaming spectators. They invested $16,110 in that contest. The referee was Irving Kutcher. He awards Robinson with a 10-round victory. Robinson weighed 141 pounds and Servo weighed 140 pounds. May 28, 1942, New York's Madison Square Garden. Now Robinson defeats Marty Servo once again, 10-round decision, in front of 13,673 spectators. Collectively, they would pay $31,870 to watch this contest. The referee was Billy Carmenette. Took the second round away from Marty Servo for low blows. Servo stood 5'7". He weighed 143 pounds. Ray Robinson stood 6 feet. He weighed 144 pounds. Here's a side note. 1946, world welterweight champion Marty Servo retires from the ring after a broken nose suffered from future world middleweight champion Rocky Graziano. March 29, 1946 in New York's Madison Square Garden, via second-round knockout. Marty Servo had won the welterweight championship crown when he defeated Freddie Ray Cochrane. February 1st, 1946 in New York's Madison Square Garden. He defeated him in the 4th round. Rocky Graziano, as a side note, was from Brooklyn, New York, and he would have several fights with a classmate of his named Harold Green. Harold Green lived in Bronzeville, Brooklyn. Harold Green's locker was in the same aisleway as my dad's in Stillman's gym. My dad told me many stories of Harold Green. Look him up. He was quite a fighter. Robinson became the world welterweight champion December 20th, 1946. We talked about that, defeating Tommy Bells at New York's Madison Square Garden. But what we didn't talk about, the Harlem sensation Robinson would become the 3rd black champion to win a title at the New York's Madison Square Garden, and the 5th black world welterweight champion behind Jersey Joe Walcott. The Barbados Demon Joe Walcott. He was a welterweight champion, the first one we ever had. Dixie Kid, 1904. Young Jack Thompson, Henry Armstrong, and then Ray Robinson. The Robinson would defeat Cuban Hawk Kid Gavilan, 15 rounds, July 11th, 1949, at Philadelphia's Municipal Stadium. 27,805 spectators would enter that arena. It would be Ray's 99th professional bout. It was his 3rd welterweight title defense. Kid Gavilan weighed 144 pounds. Ray Robinson weighed 147 pounds. That was their 2nd contest. In their 1st contest, Kid Gavilan weighed 149 pounds. Ray Robinson weighed 151 pounds. What was interesting about this contest? They would fight September 23rd, 1948, New York's Yankee Stadium. They also fought in Philadelphia. Robinson paid a fine of $5,000 because he stepped on a scale 3 pounds overweight. Now, Kid Gavilan, until his last days, would tell you that he won the first bout between Ray Robinson and himself. A side note on this conversation, I have Kid Gavilan in my top 10 greatest welterweights of all times. He was a phenomenal fighter. He was the 3rd fighter on record that I know of that would master the bolo punch. Now, many know of a Filipino fighter, Seferino Garcia. Before him was Larry Temple. Temple was a black heavyweight. In today's standards, he would have been a light heavyweight. But he was a remarkable fighter. But he was the first that I know of to constantly use the bolo punch. Ray Robinson's professional middleweight career. He fought between 1950 and 1965. He would take on Carl Bobo Olsen from Honolulu, Hawaii. He was born July 11th, 1928 in Hawaii, Honolulu. He died January 16th, 2002. He was 73 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Hawaii. He stood 5 foot 10 and a half inches, had a total bout career of 115 bouts, 97 wins, 47 knockouts, 16 losses, and 2 draws. Now, Carl Bobo Olsen would be in the ring with fighters such as Anton Radic, Milo Savage, Earl Turner, and Don Lee, Davey Sands, and Tommy Harrison, Gene Harrison, and Norman Hayes, Garth Panther, and Patty Young. Let me tell you a quick story about 2 fighters before I move forward. I mentioned Patty Young. Patty Young faced Carl Bobo Olsen because Carl Bobo Olsen was going to fight for the America's Middleweight Championship title. How was that possible? In 1952, Ray Robinson would have his last fight, moving up to light heavyweight at New York's Yankee Stadium to take on Joey Maxim from Cincinnati, Ohio. He would come up short because he would exert himself and he would pass out from the heat. So he decided to retire and his belt went vacant. Carl Bobo Olsen was in line for that opportunity, but he had to take on Patty Young. On the other side of the pond, you would have Randy Turpin, who was England's middleweight champion. And Randy Turpin had to take on Charlie Humms. And when Randy Turpin defeated Charlie Humms and Carl Bobo Olsen defeated Patty Young, that's when those 2 men would mix it up in 1953. Olsen would defeat Randy Turpin, and Olsen would become the world middleweight champion. Now, Charlie Humms, interesting story, was England's welterweight champion, and he was entitled to an opportunity at the welterweight championship title. So Kid Gavilan was supposed to face Charlie Humms. So Billy Graham, in fact, I'll get back to that story because that's a whole different story. Very interesting one, to say the least. So Robert Villemain, who was a former Pennsylvania State middleweight champion, contender, Ray Robinson would defeat him. He would take on Randy Turpin, who was a former world middleweight champion and a former European middleweight champion. Carl Bobo Olsen would face Randy Turpin for the vacant world middleweight championship strap. Kid Gavilan, who was the former world welterweight champion. Now, Kid Gavilan would face fighters such as Jesse Turner and Rocky Castellani, Joey Maxim, Sugar Ray Robinson, Archie Moore, Don Fomer, Jesse Baldry, and Pedro Gonzalez. Those are the opponents of Carl Bobo Olsen. Jake LaMotta, 1941-1951. Ray Robinson would have 6 bouts with him. Now, Jake LaMotta would be in the ring with Fizzy Zivic, Ray Robinson, Marcel Sedan, George Sugar Costner, Ozzie Bulldog Harris, Pedro Gonzalez, Bob Satterfield, Fizzy Zivic. He'd be in the ring with Lloyd Marshall, Lorenzo Strickland, Tommy Bell, Marcel Sedan. October 2nd, 1942. 145 pounds. Ray Robinson would walk into the ring. Jake LaMotta would walk into the ring weighing 157 3/4 pounds. Let's talk about these two men for one moment. Jake LaMotta would walk into the ring in 1939 in the diamond belt gloves. He was a light heavyweight. 1939, Ray Robinson fought in the New York Golden Gloves, weighing 125.5 pounds. He was a featherweight. Both in 1939. Yet these men would meet up as a professional 6 times. February 5th, 1943. Jake LaMotta stood on the scales weighing 160.5 pounds. Ray Robinson, 144.5 pounds. Ray Robinson loses the bout in his 40th professional bout in 10 rounds to Jake LaMotta, the Bronx Bull. At the Olympia Stadium in Detroit, Michigan, the referee was Sam Hennessy. He awards the Bronx Bull, Jacob LaMotta, the victory over Ray Robinson. It was a 3-1 favorite in front of 18,930 shocked spectators. February 26, 1943. Ray Robinson weighed 145 pounds. Jacob LaMotta, 163 3/4 pounds. 3 weeks later, they would meet again. Now, the reason why Jake LaMotta had to fight in New York's Madison Square Garden, because he represented New York. He represented the Jack Dempseys of the world. Not skin color, but with his punching style. February 23rd, 1945. Ray Robinson weighed 148.5 pounds. Jake LaMotta 158.25 pounds. Ray Robinson would defeat Jacob LaMotta. September 26, 1945. Ray Robinson stepped in the ring weighing 150 pounds. Jacob LaMotta 159 pounds. And after starving himself, he would regurgitate food. They would fight in front of 14,755 spectators, packed at the Comiskey Park in Chicago. It was a net gate of $74,431. Referee was Johnny Bear, and he would hold the hand of Sugar Ray Robinson. Robinson would earn $25,000. LaMotta, $20,468. February 14th, 1951. Ray Robinson walked into the ring, weighing 155.5 pounds. Jake LaMotta 160. Ray Robinson becomes the 3rd black world welterweight champion after Theodore Tiger Flowers and William Gorilla Jones. The boxing audience, 14,802 spectators. They will witness history. Ray Robinson was the 3rd black middleweight champion of the world. So if I said welterweight, I'm making the correction now. And what was interesting about this contest? Those spectators paid $20,840. Robinson defeats Jacob LaMotta, who was paid $62,522. I want you to understand the price difference that men would take to get a shot at the title. You see, the title was everything. At that time, it represented who you were, what neighborhood you came from, what sacrifices you made, how you were looked and viewed as from the world. Ray Robinson, the 3rd black middleweight champion in history, a young man from Alley, Georgia. He would pass through Detroit, Michigan, where he would meet Joseph Louis Barrow. He was too young to fight in the AAU tournament. Had to borrow a card from a former amateur fighter. Had his name changed from Walker Smith to Ray Robinson. All for this moment. He took $20,840. Jake, you can have the $62,522. But once I become champion, that would be no more. I would give him hell at the table. I would make sure I would get what I was worth. And that he did. And because of that, the Gene Fomers of the world, the Carmen Basilios of the world, would resent him. Carmen Basilio never spoke to Ray Robinson. He hated him. When Ray Robinson died, there's a documentary stating he didn't give a damn. Because he felt as though Ray Robinson insulted him in front of his wife. That shows you the pride that men had during their day. You didn't disrespect me in any form or fashion. Doesn't matter how much money I have or don't have. And once I become champion, you're going to respect that. Oh, what a day. What an era. These were men. Now, as we look at Gene Fomer, he'd be in the ring with Rocky Castellani and Ralph Tiger Jones, Charlie Holmes and Ray Robinson, Spider Webb, Milo Savage, Gil Turner, Del Flanagan, Chico Vijar, Wilfred Greaves from Canada, Joe Maselli, and Joey Giardello. Gene Fomer versus Ray Robinson. January 2nd, 1957. Gene defeats Robinson. Fomer weighed 157 pounds. He wins the World Middleweight Championship title. Robinson stepped on the scales weighing 160. He was a 65 betting favorite. In front of 18,934 spectators. Robinson earned $139,050. It was turned over to the IRS. When he came to the dressing room, he was expecting his check, and he was told that your entire check went to the IRS. He burst out in tears. All that hard work of training, all that hard work of sacrifices, donating money as Joe Louis did, only to have his entire check taken away from him. His face was a ball of tears. Now, Robinson would take on Gene Fomer, May 1st, 1957, Chicago, Illinois. Robinson KO'd Gene Fomer to become the 4th world middleweight champion. 1 minute and 27 seconds of the 5th round. In front of 14,757 spectators. The referee was Frank Sikora. Weighs off the contest. And he saves the 3.5-1 favorite, Gene Fomer, from further punishment. Both men earned $67,394. Robinson would become a 4-time middleweight champion, the most in boxing history. The celebration in Harlem couldn't be more clearer as to the proud moment that they would feel from their Harlem night. Just as proud as when Joe Louis would defeat Max Schmeling in a return go after he would lose and be stopped in 12 rounds from Max Schmeling in 1936. But Louis would knock out Schmeling in 38. And that made Harlem and Detroit and Chicago prouder than they have ever been. Was somewhat same with Ray Robinson when he would knock out Gene Fomer. What a moment What a time in history. See you in the next video, part 3. I'm Scrapbook Boxing. The Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. The complete history of boxing will continue. Peace. Be well. Thanks for listening.